joining me for the conversation is Miss Avani Kulkarni. Avani hails from Baroda, Gujarat. She's a physiotherapist by educational training and profession. She believes that all human actions are an outcome of an amalgamation of human mind and body, and that a human behavior or action can be altered or decided by practicing mindfulness and well being. She believes in focusing on the most basic and essential elements of life. While she is trying to incorporate little changes in her own life, she aims to take this idea to the world and bring transformation in people's habits, behaviors, and outlook towards themselves and their life. This all by being more aware and mindful. So I welcome you all to this episode number 2 of Hone Do Baatein, where Avani is going to join us. Welcome, Avani, and thank you so much for joining us today for this recording.
Thank you for inviting me on this talk show, and I'm very happy that there is a platform that you have provided from where I can take my little ideas and put them in front of all the people, and I want them to be much more healthier.
Great. So, like Avani, this platform is a very informal platform. We call it Hone Do Baatein, where we want to focus on conversations about things which I would like to understand as a person who is a layman, and our listeners would surely have something to take away from that. So, today we are going to talk about well-being and mindfulness, which for you is a way of lifestyle, and this is something which is so important to you. I would want to, I'll just give this platform to you so that you just start. Let us know what is it about well-being and mindfulness that you want to sort of you want our listeners to know about, or something that is so close to you. What is it?
So, first of all, I'm really glad this is an informal talk, because usually when we are living our day-to-day lives, we are not having a lot of formal things going on in our lives, and everything that we do, from the breath that we take to the water that we drink, everything is on the very informal basis. So I'm glad that we are talking about this in a very informal manner, and that I can explain it in a subtle way that would come out as a very simple thing to do. All the practices that I may be talking about over here are going to be very simple, and they may look like very difficult ones, but they are simple ones. So thank you that that you mentioned that this is an informal talk about it, and also starting with the mindfulness and well-being, how they are linked together, is it's about being in that moment in everything that you are doing. Usually, starting from breath, if we talk about, we take breaths like the first time we come out in this world, we are breathing, and breath is our first best friend and the last one that stays with us. So, but we never ask it. We never even think about how we are breathing, how much air we are taking, and what is the mechanism behind it. We never actually go behind understanding of what breath means. So a lot of people I have seen, they do explore breathing techniques, and after the propagation of yoga that has been there all over the world, uh, pranayam has been one of the practices that people have come across. But breathing is something that, in layman term, I don't know how many people actually sit and go back to their own selves, the element that keeps them alive, which is pran, which is energy, which is the air they take in and the air they breathe out. So that is one part, that is breath. Another is water that we drink. 70% of us is made up of water, and we drink water and we consume it, I would say now, because the way it is sold in bottles of 20 rupees, 30 rupees a liter.
Right.
So we consume water. And when it comes to drinking water, how closely are we observing the way we are drinking water? Every time we gulp down, what exactly is happening to that water and how it is going inside? We never think about it when we are thirsty. We want to quench our thirst and we are gulping down cold, chilled water just to quench our thirst. We never think what it is going to do when it gets inside our bodies. So these are two major elements. It's just air and water that I talked about. Similarly, there are all the other elements that are there that make our body, that helps our body function
The way it functions.
the way it functions.
Right. I mean, I just like the way you have put the analogy of breath. The fact that it is a friend that we had never asked for, but it has been there with us, and it will always be there with us until our last breath. So
That is where we depart.
That is where we depart. Yeah. So. Okay, you mentioned about the two elements. You mentioned about water, and you mentioned about breath, and there are other basic elements that there are other elements that is where the lifestyle and well-being concept for you revolves around. So I just want to ask the very basic question: why lifestyle, and what is it that is so important in making a lifestyle change? Why is it important at all?
To start from why is there a need in the shift in the way we are living our lifestyle, is because maybe we have already had a huge shift from how it was supposed to be. The human body is a product of, it's a creation of nature, and it functions through nature, and laws of nature governs it.
Mm-hmm.
The shift that I am talking about is going back to the natural laws.
Mm-hmm.
Because currently we have already come a long way from, and we have come far away from the way Mother Nature has governed us.
Mm-hmm.
So the processes that I am mentioning is going back to Mother Nature.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So going back to Mother Nature, I mean, it's a huge statement that you've just made, Avani, and you mentioned the word process when you were describing why lifestyle. So you said that it's a process, and I know that you have been working on this beautiful project that you are visualizing. You have called it transformation. You've called it Parivartan. Now, Parivartan is a lifelong process, and the statement that you made, that going back to Mother Nature, it could as well be a lifelong process. So, what do you intend to uh, do in this parivartan or transformation that you are visualizing for yourself and for other people? So what is it like? What is the basics of this program? I think you started with breath, you started with water, going back to Mother Nature, and undergoing the whole process of transformation. What would it take for a person to do that?
To start with, um, the one thing that you mentioned, that it's a lifelong process, and the way it has been called, the whole process has been called Parivartan, is in itself the journey where the person has come a long way from Mother Nature and pursuing the ambitious things of the global world. But it is about that person then coming back to what exactly helps it survive, helps in living, and the distance that the person has already traveled away from Mother Nature, it has not only taken that person away from nature, but has caused a very strong disconnect from who the person himself is. And when I come across the people who come in the clinic, and when I am having conversations with them, and when I ask them to move one of the hand or leg in a particular direction, or either to tense it up or relax it, I see that it's difficult for them to navigate that command into their bodies. And that is where I see that, forget about the Mother Nature, the body that you are moving around with the whole day, all your life, you are disconnected with that body. The mind that everybody feels so proud about is completely disconnected with the body. The mind is, we say that the mind is controlling the body, but the mind is way away from controlling the body. So, as I mentioned, the process is basically for adults, it is for youths who have come long way from being disconnected from themselves. And it is a process where it is about, even after achieving all the success in life, it is again coming back to what helps us live. The basics, the basic elements that help us live. The process is coming back to those elements.
Right.
And I see huge masses who have now urbanized and who live in metros. They have had this shift away from themselves. So, and they are the ones who land up in lifestyle disorders. Diabetes, for example, blood pressure, for example. These are not damages to the body. They are damages done by the level of mind work that we have, so-called mind work, I would say, that people have taken up as jobs. sitting in front of the desktop,
Right.
and the kind of lifestyle that they have built, sedentary as the term goes by, that is what has brought them quite far away from themselves, and they are not aware of how they are living, how their bodies are functioning.
Right.
And the process is mainly for adults and youths, and once they learn to appreciate these little elements that are present that help them survive and live, children will pick up eventually, so that children don't have to go through the trauma of the lifestyle disorders that we all are going through right now.
Right. I mean, I just like there was a thought-provoking thing that you mentioned about how individuals are disconnected when it comes to their mind and body. So, what do you think causes this disconnect between the mind and body? I think one thing I heard you saying is how we prioritize our jobs, the activities that require mental, exercise, and in that process we just don't pay attention to our body, and the body suffers. So, I mean, why do you think this happens? First question. And second question I would want to know is, you mentioned that focus on the basic 5 elements will sort of help a person in developing a lifestyle that will, bridge the gap that has been caused between the mind and the body of a person. So I would want you to throw some light on how will those basic 5 elements help the person to bridge that gap between the mind and body, and why in the first place is there a gap that exists? Because technically, as a layman, if I hear you, I would be like, um, I think my mind and body are pretty much intact. They are not separate, and I know what my mind is doing. I know what my body is doing. So why do you say that there is a gap? So coming from that perspective, I would also want you to elaborate more on why that gap exists. Why do you see that gap? And then how do you propose these 5 basic elements uh, will actually help in bridging that gap?
So, referring to the first question, um, I would say the current scenario that we live in, it's the never-ending race that we all have entered, and where everything is on the outside, the outer accomplishments and the success stories that are out there, where a lot of things are on the checklist. The materials are put on the checklist, and all the materials of that list have huge capital and monetary tags. And the fancy jobs that we have taken up do come because we are chasing those checklist tasks to be cut off, and it's the never ending race that we are pursuing. We are running in that race, and the level of satisfaction, the threshold, is way high. We are not satisfied with the outer accomplishments that we are having on daily basis. We are all having meals, and we are all having fluffy beds to sleep, and we have all the things in the world, but yet on the inside, when we look, we are still not satisfied. We are not content with everything that we have accomplished. We are working day and night.
Right.
We are doing night shifts, we are doing overtime, we are doing so much, but the element of content is not there. There's nobody who is trying to bridge the gap between I stand at an optimal level, let me bring up the ones who are in need. Everybody is trying to gap the bridge between I am somewhere where I want it to be and next where I want to be.
Right. So it's like a never-ending race, like you said.
Never-ending race. And because everything is revolving around capital, it's a number game, and numbers are infinite.
Right. I also like the word that you used previously. You used a word mind work. So, I mean, do you think the urban lifestyle, which involves so much of mind work, I'm just using your term, we hardly indulge in things that would require our body muscles to rather work. We end up doing mind work. So we have actually shifted from the culture of farming and cultivation, which traditionally was the way of life for humans, and before that obviously we were hunters and gatherers. So do you think the gap has also broadened or widened because of the fact that we no more indulge in activities that require our body muscles to sort of to be exercised, and we just exercise our mind and not the body?
Absolutely. This reminds me of Leo Tolstoy's White Man's Burden, where he has talked about how we just use our minds, and we are sitting in front of desk punching numbers,
right,
and we are getting paid, and with the money we are able to buy the food, which if we don't like, we just throw it away. But there's a person out there who has worked hard in the field under the sun, and I feel sorry for the urban kids, for that matter, who, when asked where does bread come from and where does milk come from, and they say supermarket. So they don't know where food comes from.
Right.
They know they can pay and they can get the food, but the hard work that is poured in cultivating and growing the raw ingredients, not even what the bread that they are buying, cultivating grains, processing them, everything behind the bread that we receive on our plates. That is something that the people who are earning, sitting in front of the desktop, it's a burden on them. It's a big burden that they are carrying and they don't realize.
Right. Absolutely. Fair enough. I mean, I would really want you to, explain me and everyone who is listening to this as to how will these 5 basic elements help in me or you or anybody who would actually want to practice this, to bridge this gap that you have rightly identified and you wish to work on.
So, talking about the 5 elements that the process of Parivartan talks about is it starts with ether. The second is air. Third is fire. Fourth is water. And fifth is earth. So if we see ourselves, our bodies, our mind, everything that we are made up of is the 5 elements. It's not only mentioned in physics, but in our Vedas and the ancient scriptures and even modern science. Everywhere, these 5 elements, it feels as if the reality of these 5 elements, the thing that they exist, it comes again and again in front of us. Every time the ancient scriptures tried to explore, they landed up with these 5 elements. When modern science wanted to explore, when physics is trying to explore, they are landing up with these 5 elements.
Okay.
And it looks so magical that these 5 elements are what we are made up of. So only by working on these 5 elements,
we are working on our core.
We're working on our core, what we are made up of.
Right.
So when I talk about ether, I connect it with sleep.
Okay.
A space where a phase where we switch off all the other external distractions and we get back to everything that we are.
Right.
We get back to our unconscious mind, the subconscious mind, and finally the conscious mind is put to rest.
Okay.
Where it cannot argue or rationalize.
Right.
And everything that we are, we witness that. And it is in sleep that we witness our true selves. It's an irony, but we do.
Yeah.
So, and that is how I consider sleep as one of the major element that works in proper functioning of our lifestyle. So the first thing that I always try to seek as an answer when I ask all the people who come to me is how much do you sleep? How good do you sleep? How deep do you sleep? And what are your sleep timings?
Right.
It's like you are making a machine function through day and night, and you're not paying attention to the maintenance part at all. How long do you think the machine is going to work?
Yeah.
So when I talk about sleep, out of 24 hours, I guess 17 to 18 hours we are running around making our machine work, and we are barely giving it 5 or 6 hours to rest. All the hours we are awake, we are thinking, we are doing something or the other, running around, doing calculations, arguing, making reasonings and whatnot. Our brain is taking all the load continuously, I guess overtime, and it doesn't get paid. So a basic function that happens, a chemical reaction that in layman's terms, what happens is the neurons in the brain, they work, and when any muscle or any tissue or any cell works, it produces acids. And imagine a hand. Try working out your hand. Try doing the dumbbells for 16 hours and how your biceps would feel.
Right.
That's the level of acid that the brain goes through.
Every day.
Yeah,
and we don't even realize that.
And when we come to sleep, we are not even putting our minds to rest. We fall asleep. We don't take ourselves to sleep. You see?
Yeah.
We get tired to that extent that we fall asleep. Whereas we are supposed to take ourselves to sleep. We are supposed to put ourselves to sleep.
I really like the way you put this, that, how we fall asleep and we don't take ourselves to sleep. And I mean, I don't know, is it really possible to take oneself to sleep? How does one do that?
Sometimes we say that we should be tired enough so that we don't have to think much before sleeping.
Yeah.
I agree to the hard work part, but I also wish to put a pointer over here, that is, before falling asleep, put your mind to rest.
That's a nice way to put it. Yeah.
We fall asleep when our mind is fully active, engaged,
Right.
and the muscle tone, it's way high.
Right.
And over a period of time, when this muscle tension is carried over every single night during sleep, imagine the amount of tension that the ligaments and joints are going to gain.
Okay.
And that is where all these stress disorders come up. Psychosomatic disorders have the stats that around 80% or more arthritis is caused because of psychosomatic stress. They're psychosomatic disorders.
Right.
They have nothing to do with the kind of overwork that the joint had to do, and the muscle work, and sitting on floor, and I don't know what not. I mean, a lot of people have come up with different theories of why people have arthritis, but the current scenario that all I can see is the amount of tension the muscles go with when they are put to sleep. They don't sleep actually. We don't even put them to sleep. So the only remedy I see is to put ourselves to sleep, is to keep aside all the distractions, especially the screens.
Right.
And the notifications. And if you feel you start feeling sleepy by 10, then start putting yourself to bed by 9:30.
Right. Okay.
It takes at least half an hour for your mind to calm down, and only if your mind calms down, your muscles are going to calm down.
This is a very subtle way to also see how the mind and body, unites.
Yes.
And they do not have that gap which you were previously mentioning about.
Yes.
Yeah.
So sleep is something that I consider as one of the major element. It is when the mind and the brain, they are put to rest and nothing is interfering, and they receive enough amount of blood flow, and they receive enough amount of oxygen and nutrition to wash away all the acids and stress levels that has been built up.
Right.
And it's very important to have a good deep sleep before you start to put your machine back to work.
Right. You have been using the word machine, and I think sleep is one of the maintenance of this tool that we use to live our lives.
Absolutely.
I would really want you to also talk about the 4 elements that you mentioned for our listeners.
So the second comes air, which I started the talk with. Air is associated with breath, the way we breathe in oxygen and the way we breathe out carbon dioxide.
Right.
It is said that our age is not determined by the years we live, but the breaths we take. So the slower breath we take, the pace, the rhythm, the slower it is, the enhanced absorption of oxygen happens in the lungs.
Right.
So if we talk about regulation of breath with respect to restoring the element of air in our body, I feel all of us, we need to take 2 minutes out every 2 hours to just catch up with the breath.
Right.
Because for the 2 hours that we don't pay attention, the breath is trying to catch up with us. So we should learn and try to catch up with the pace the breath has.
Right.
Slow down and inhale for 3 to 4 seconds. Hold the breath inside for 3 to 4 seconds, and then takes a while more to exhale the breath out around 6 to 8 seconds. So if this is done every 2 hours, only for 2 minutes, it's just about 2 minutes.
Right.
Maybe if we carry out that process of 4 seconds in, 4 seconds hold, and 6 to 8 seconds out, we'll be hardly able to take 8 breaths in 2 minutes, but that's fine. That's completely fine.
Right.
It's required for us, our body, to calm down.
Yeah. I remember you once shared with me about tortoise.
Yes.
And how they live so long, more than 300 years. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Whatever amount of years they live is only because they breathe slowly. Yes. They breathe. I think they're the most patient species on this planet when it comes to breathing. And I think in this time of this pandemic, COVID-19, when the most affected part of our body, the one who is infected is the lung. The breath is something which gets discounted on. I think this information is so important for anyone who would be listening this, or I mean, not only for these unprecedented times, but also for all the years of lives. I mean, years in our lives that we are going to live.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Right. So what apart from air?
So next comes
ether and air.
Yeah, ether and air. And next comes water. As I mentioned earlier, we are 70% water. So
right.
Water comprises the major portion of our body fluids, blood, the fluids that are present in the cells. So there's a particular temperature which is maintained in the body, and only if that temperature is present do all the enzymes and all the functions, chemical processes that are supposed to happen, they happen normally and regularly. For example, the human body is maintained at 37 degrees.
Okay.
So that is where all the chemical processes happen at the optimal level.
Right.
So whenever the temperature rises, we say, oh, it's fever. Whenever the temperature drops, we feel that it's getting cold.
Right.
And we feel sluggish. So mild changes in those temperature, in the blood temperature, the body temperature, it interferes with the way the chemical processes happen in our body, and the whole body runs on chemical reactions.
Right.
So when I talk about water, I am largely focusing on the temperature of water that we consume, more than the quantity in this case.
Okay.
Because now that we are all equipped with the modern appliances of refrigerators and instant cooling items and whatnot, we all have chilled water bottles available, which are handy. And every time we are consuming any food item, the stomach, it has an element of fire that works in coordination with all the enzymes, which is responsible for the digestion of the food.
Right.
And imagine after eating or during our meals, we are constantly pouring chilled water in our stomach.
Yeah.
So imagine there is this vessel in which we are cooking rice, and we have just turned on the flame, and the rice is getting cooked. It is turning soft.
Right.
And during that process, we are constantly pouring chilled water on the flame, in the vessel. Imagine the kind of rice that is going to be cooked.
So we basically ruin our digestive system and digestion of the food.
Absolutely.
When we consume the
Chilled
cold water.
Yeah. Cold water, chilled water.
Right.
So to keep up with the warmth that is required in the body for all the chemical processes to happen, and especially digestion, because water straightway rushes to the stomach, it's very important to consume, if not warm water, which I suggest. Warm water is something that we must consume at least once or twice a day.
Okay.
Around meal timings.
Okay.
But trying to avoid cold water is going to be a big blessing. Drinking normal room temperature water is something that the body requires. So that is the first part of the temperature of water. And then second is the hydration part, where we talk about the quantity of water. We are trapped in rushing around here and there, and we forget to drink water. We don't consume enough water, and everything that happens in our body, the blood carries the nutrients and the oxygen from one place to another. It is through blood, and when we are not pouring enough water on the inside of our body, we are not watering ourselves. Everything gets sluggish on the inside. The body feels dehydrated because it's not receiving enough water, and it's not receiving enough amount of oxygen, and it's not receiving enough amount of nutrition
Right, right.
So temperature and quantity of water matters a lot.
Okay.
So that's the third element.
And what are the other two elements?
The other two elements are fire and earth.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to fire, I associate it with the exercise,
Mm-hmm.
and I also associate it with the exposure to sunlight,
Okay.
where all the processes in our body, as I mentioned before, require blood circulation. And when we work out, when we exercise, the muscles, they undergo pumping action.
They receive some amount of heat.
Heat?
Or rather they create.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That is what is formed. So the pumping action of the muscles that happens, it again increases the blood circulation,
Which in turn generates heat. Yeah.
which generates heat,
Yeah.
and the heat then runs or regulates the metabolism of our body.
Right, right.
And our bodies, they function because metabolism happens.
Right.
The big blocks of food that we eat, they are broken down into small packets of energy, and that is the process where metabolism comes into picture,
Right.
where the big blocks are broken down. So the breaking down happens through working out.
Correct.
So I put exercise and sunlight. Sunlight is, as it has been mentioned, nothing would have come to surface. Nothing would have lived if sun wouldn't have been there. The living organisms, to be specific.
Yeah.
So we live in air conditions, and we move from our air conditioned homes to our air conditioned cars and step into air conditioned offices, back into car and home.
Right.
There's no exposure to the sunlight. But the people who understand the importance of sunlight, they find their time to be exposed to sun, their bare skin to the sun. And it's the sun that provides us with vitamin D, which we get from nowhere else, unless we consume it from artificial sources, which may or may not be in sync with what our body accepts or rejects. So sunlight is the only source of vitamin D, and it was not quite early that I came across the whole cycle of vitamin D and calcium and bones. It is so funny that initially people were told that consume calcium, have tablets and drink lots of milk for growing bones and making them stronger, and they were true to an extent. Later, when science came across studies which said that whatever calcium goes inside, if the element of vitamin D is absent, the calcium just passes through the bowels just like that. It doesn't get absorbed in the body at all if vitamin D is not present.
Okay.
So studies showed that in spite of heavy calcium dosage, people did land up in osteoporosis.
Okay.
Where the lifestyle said that they were not exposed to sunlight.
Right.
There was a deficiency of vitamin D.
Right, right.
So whatever calcium one consumes, make sure to sit in sunlight. And I combine the workout under sunlight, and sunlight only before 9 o'clock. Not beyond 9, because then we are exposed to ultraviolet rays, which are again not good for our skin.
Right.
So the sunlight that is present before 9 o'clock, try working out under the sunlight, in presence of sunlight, so that all the vitamin D and all the weight bearing that is supposed to happen, it happens in the presence of sunlight. And the calcium deposition that is actually supposed to happen in the bones, it happens out of workout.
That's a very important, I think, information. Even I didn't know that how what is the role of vitamin D in our bodies. Also, I think, Avani, I mean, do you think it is also important to maintain the consistency when we talk about the amount of exposure that we have to sunlight? Because these days people would they might as well say that, yeah, I go out for vacations and I lay on the beach and I get myself tanned and I consume enough I absorb enough sunlight that my body requires, but then I think you are not mentioning the exposure to sunlight in the manner which people do when they go out on beaches. But you are mentioning to something which is much more consistent on daily basis, right?
Absolutely. So whenever people come to me, and usually they're housewives who are going through problems of low calcium, I tell them that you do have morning tea, you do read newspapers, right? They always complain we don't have time for all that. So I ask them, you do cut vegetables, right? You do prepare dough for rotis and chapatis, you do have your morning tea, you do go through a bit of newspaper. Try doing all these activities sitting in sun. You just require 15 minutes of exposure and you're done.
Right.
So it's basically, it's just 10 to 15 minutes every day on daily basis.
Right.
Before 9 o'clock in the morning. That works.
Absolutely. I think this is a very vital information that anybody who would be listening to this in whatever capacities in their lives, they should try doing this.
Absolutely. And I usually try and devise mechanisms which they fit in the busy schedules, because my approach is never a quick fix or a forced approach or forced method or something that is a big jump. I always stick to gradual shifts and gradual processes, because the kind of life that we have moved towards hasn't been an overnight.
Right.
We all have spoiled ourselves gradually over a long period of time.
Yeah.
And something that has been developed in 15 to 20 years, I think our mothers have taken our good care till the time we were 5, till the time we were 10, before we started being rebellions and teenagers. But before that, the lives that they have built for us, the kind of food that they have provided us. So, deducting that part, 15 to 20 years we have taken good enough time to spoil ourselves. So I would not expect major life changes in 15-20 days.
Yeah, absolutely.
So whenever I am approaching any person with any process, I ask them to practice only one element at a time.
Yeah.
It is working on sleep at a time, then starting with exercises, one thing at a time. Only when that practice becomes effortless, then you move to the second habit.
Mm-hmm.
I can never ask them to work on all the 5 elements
At the same time.
at the same. It cannot be a quick fix. It cannot be a forced thing.
Right.
The thing that I fear most about forced protocols is there are high chances of rebounds,
Right.
which the body cannot afford.
Right. Right.
I see people talking about, I hear people talking about, I lost 15 kgs in 3 months and I lost so many kilos, I gained so many kilos. I'm like, is your body even capable of taking so many shocks?
Yeah.
So, something that you have accumulated over 10 years, you want to fix it in 10 months. Why?
Yeah.
So, that was about the element fire, which is associated with exposure to sunlight and workout.
Right. Right.
And last comes the food, the earth element, which is what we are made up of. We are what we eat.
Yeah.
Literally. So when people come to me and they come and ask me if I am a vegetarian or I am a non-vegetarian, it's a big classification, and I'm like, okay, you don't want to ask if I'm a vegetarian or a vegan. and when they are so skeptical about knowing, and I said, I don't consider myself as a vegetarian or a non-vegetarian. If we consider non-vegetarian being somebody who consumes living organisms, I think we are already consuming so many organisms while we are breathing. There are microbes in the air. Aren't we taking them in? So, for me, food is the kind of work that we want to do and the kind of person we want to become, and we choose our food accordingly.
Right. Right.
For me, vegetarian food or non-vegetarian food is not a classification to be put in.
Mm-hmm.
A place where certain products or certain consumables are supposed to be consumed,
Mm-hmm.
which is the requirement of the lifestyle, the kind of work that they are supposed to do.
Right.
If you want to be a monk, eat vegan. Stick to vegetarian food. If you want to be a warrior or a soldier, go ahead with meat. That is the kind of substance,
Food that the body will require.
the substance that is going to get entered into your body and make you like that.
Yeah.
So when it comes to food, there is this three kinds of food that usually Ayurveda talks about, and that is Sattvic, Rajas, and Tamasic. Sattvic, Rajasic, and Tamasic. So when we want to do activities which require our mind to be calm, peaceful, we must stick to the Sattvic diet. When our body requires a lot of physical exertion, strength, aggression, we must consume Rajasic diet.
Okay.
And Tamasic diet is prescribed. I wouldn't say prescribed, but it is an element which is used that helps you to just indulge, which sometimes may be used in medicinal purposes.
Okay.
Extremely excited people may need tamasic food to indulge and calm themselves down.
Okay.
So that is where I feel these three elements of food is how I see it. The food we eat is what we become.
Right. I really like the way you said that we are what we eat. So uh, it just makes me think, and I'm sure we have also talked about this before, that you know how we eat junk and then we think junk and we become junk, and when we eat something which is healthy, we treat our body as a temple, as a shrine, and we therefore develop or grow uh, to think healthy and behave healthy.
Right.
So thanks a lot to again say that, to mention that sentence. I think this is something uh, which has certainly remained with me. I mean, over the period of last few months, I've also tried to change the way I have been eating, and not to say that I have really accomplished something great, but I've just tried in bits and pieces. And I realized the importance of the sentence that you said, that we are what we eat. And I think that is something which certainly I'm going to take it away again after this conversation.
Absolutely.
So great, Avni. I mean, thanks a lot to explain so patiently and in such a detailed fashion about the five elements, and how the very basic, elements is something which is missing in our lifestyles, and therefore creates the gap between the mind and the body. And I think it becomes vital for us to understand that to maintain the integrity of our individual being, ourselves, we have to maintain the integrity of these five elements in our lifestyles, and that is how we will proceed towards well-being and mindfulness, I guess, right?
Absolutely.
So great. I mean, any last words or thoughts for anybody who would be listening to this?
I have tried to put it as simple as possible with respect to the five basic things that we do on daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
And it is about exploring what your own body needs.
Right.
Be it sleep, be it breath,
Yeah.
be it water, be it workout, or be it food.
Yeah, that's very important.
These
Yeah.
five things, they are personalized for each and every individual.
Absolutely.
So it's extremely important to not rely on what others do or others preach blindfoldedly, and it's important to understand what your body requires.
Yeah.
So it's good to carry information to explore and to know what is right for you. It's good to explore. But do not rely on somebody without understanding.
Yeah.
So these five elements are the constituents, the basic constituents because of which our body functions. So these five things, they need to be sought through in detail, explored, studied by everybody for their own selves.
So it should be customized. It's not like, oh, Avni's lifting a 20 kgs weight, so Neetu is also supposed to uplift the same.
No.
Yeah, right. So
never. And if somebody is following a keto diet, let me try it as well.
Yeah.
No,
right.
diet doesn't work that way.
Absolutely. I like the way you also put that, how how you said that I'm vegetarian or non-vegetarian is something which should not be classified in general. It should rather be classified as per the person's need.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I think this end note is vital for anybody who would be listening to this. Also for me, that customization of the 5 elements is the vital thing to do, and not just
Absolutely.
blindly following what is there in the market for us to
Absolutely.
just consume. Right, right. Great. Thank you so much, Avni. Thank you so much for taking out time, and we are finally recording this. I hope anybody who would be listening to this, uh, you know, it influences them to start their process of transformation and parivartan in their lives, uh, be it small or big. I just hope that people in their individual lives start the process somewhere, sometime soon.
Absolutely.
Thanks a lot, Avni. Thanks a lot
Pleasure.
again. And I would also like to thank all the listeners to be with us, and I hope this helps all of us somewhere, sometime. Thanks a lot.